Alright guys, I've been asked to make another few videos, so I'll go through and make a few talking points of rotaries are expensive to build. They're very expensive, okay? So if you don't have a budget, sell the car, honestly. Like there's no reason to have these things built incorrectly because it will not last. So work hard, take care of yourself, but take your time. This does not have to be an instantaneous, one done type build for your car. I feel like these are the perfect platform to have as a long term build, as they're challenging and they are very nice to finally showcase. I mean, like for my car, I've had almost 10 years. Yeah, almost 10 years. And I went through weekends at the nightclub, weekdays at the bar, uh, construction job, hotel job, engineering, school to pay for all the stuff that I've been trying to do, right? So for the most part, it's all paid for. It's done. Um, these cars are very expensive to build because everything has to be oversized for a normal application. If you compare a Honda Civic, you're doing like, my Civic, the whole fuel system cost me, I don't know, even with the water meth kit, it was like $650, $800 at most, maybe. And on a rotary, you're talking 3 to 4 times that cost, due to injector cost, due to fuel system, fuel filtration, which is incredibly important. If you're not running a 10 or 6 micron or smaller on a set of EV14 modern injectors, you're doing yourself a disservice. Those will clog, they will cause an issue, and they will screw up your tuning, which makes all of this, you know, your whole point of building a reliable car, it's a moot point, it's gone. So definitely, definitely budget out to go with the modern injector from Inject Dynamics, FIC, South Bay, whoever. But you have to run a tight fuel filter. I highly suggest a fuel pressure sensor because the first thing to always fail on a rotary is a lack of fuel pressure. So that'll most likely be due to the age of the tank. We're talking a 30 to 40-year-old car with rust and buildup and all that stuff. And so that will clog a fuel filter, which if you don't have one, is going to clog the injectors, which is going to screw up your whole tune. And when we're talking about a few percentage flow, like 2 to 3% is really where I leave my cars that is the within tolerance region, right? When you are low on gas, I can show car and car and car again about how, when this person is under a quarter tank, their car reads 8% fuel difference versus a full tank. Now, if you have a fuel filter clogged and you're within that tolerance, you're way beyond that tolerance, actually, in the safety factor of what the ECU can handle, unless we have a very large open short-term fuel trim, in which you don't want it to be overshooting that anyways, especially not in boost. So rotaries, they're expensive to build, but build them right. Next thing we want to cover, I think, is going to be ignition system. Ignition 1As are a great option. They're like $75 a pop. I've had really good luck with ones from Haltech, AEM, MSD. Actually, MSD ones are fantastic. So besides those, kind of try to avoid those other brands. They've been problematic a few times. So ignition 1As are going to be limited by spark energy due to the combustion time. And the spark energy per power is where you're going to be setting them. So to put that plainly, over 9,000 RPM, the amount of duration that you have of the engine. So let's say we are An entire engine period is 6.66 milliseconds. Okay? So if you are sparking for 3.2 milliseconds, which is the duration of a smart coil, and you have 6.6 to play with, how much charge time do you have? Well, it's not that much. So the idea being that you have to actually decrease the total amount of charge time of your coils, your dwell time, to make them handle 9,000 RPM plus. If you don't, they're overlapping the next combustion cycle, which can cause detonation because now you're combusting the next cycle before it's supposed to be getting there. So I always try to limit those to about 8,500 RPM or less. And then when it comes to total power, I try to think of power in terms of combustion pressure, or in a very simple term, boost pressure. It gives us a very consistent overlay of what we can do. So something like the factory BUR 9 EQs, those, I would say, the absolute limit of those, I would say, is right around 450 to 500 horsepower. Beyond that, you're doing a huge disservice to yourself. Running a race plug on an otherwise factory motor actually picks up power. It is a much more efficient burn. Now, getting back to the Ignition 1As and how that works is the Ignition 1A power that I would cut them off and say it's time to go CDI is probably in the ballpark about 550 horsepower. And then if you're really pushing hard and it's clean, you can get them about 700, 750. I prefer having CDI at that point, because CDI, we're operating, instead of 3.2 milliseconds, we're operating at 0.2 milliseconds of spark time. So you have the same amount of total energy, if not quite a bit more, depending on which CDI you have. And it's now instantaneous, boom, shooting all that out. So the energy is the same, right? We're talking millijoules, but the duration is much shorter. Now, what does that mean? That burst of energy that comes through is much hotter, and that will cut through the boost very well, through the cylinder pressures, and be a very clean combustion event. It's also not having an issue with RPM, because now you don't have that window of charge time. It's going to happen regardless, right? Because you won't run out of time for that. 0.2 milliseconds. Sorry, yeah, 0.2 milliseconds, not 3.2. So, CDI, huge upgrade. This is something that will cut through all boost, all fuel. It'll never have a drawback, and it actually uses less energy. So if you have a smaller charging system, smaller alternator, whatever, it'll handle it just fine. So that is kind of the Ignition, all in a nutshell. Turbocharger Systems, very simple. If you think about what works best on Rotary, we know we have a lot of heat, we have a lot of pressure. Okay, that's why your exhaust is so loud in NA. It is deafening, right? So what do we want to do? We want to have a larger turbine wheel ratio than a standard reciprocating engine. Very simple. So one of my clients right now has a 6-port NA block, very simple studs, and we want a turbo system that's going to work for him at a reliable 400 horsepower, no problem, pump gas. He is going to be going with an 8380 Borg Warner, which is like a 366 with a larger turbine housing. Turbine wheel, excuse me. And I'm finding through more and more work that a larger wheel and a smaller A over R for the turbine housing is getting our best combination of power band girth and peak power. So I'm calculating out area of like what the actual power is, right? So our total area under the curve is benefiting best from that scenario. So always try to oversize your turbine wheel if you can. I have a few companies that will work with me to make custom stuff. Highly suggest it. If you have questions on that, feel free to reach out. If you need help sizing a turbo based on your needs, I can give you flow data for everything, both compressor and turbine. So I'm really trying to make a good database for us to work from to continue bettering the cars, because the market we are in right now, we have a massive amount of misinformation. And a few of us are doing a very good job making sure this is not a problem in the future. So we're really trying to get information out there. We're really trying to make it crystal clear on how to make your car as good as it can be, because we know it's an expensive platform, and not to redo things 3 times over. You know, it's hard to build. Rotaries are tough to build. So hopefully this helps a few of you get an idea on how to size things, what's important, where to focus. And I'll be making a few of these talking head type videos, and just I'll try to be more specific in the future. But for sure, sensors are your friend. Modern ECUs are your friend. Proper size turbocharging. That's the way to go. All right, y'all. Catch you later.